Imagine stepping onto the muddy, bustling streets of London in the 14th century. The air is thick, a pungent cocktail of wood smoke, rotting refuse, roasting meats, and the briny tang of the nearby River Thames. We often picture the Middle Ages through the lens of Hollywood. Kings tearing into massive turkey legs, a bird not yet discovered by Europeans, while peasants gnaw on stale crusts in the mud. But the culinary reality of medieval London was far more complex, highly regulated and deeply stratified by social class. At the heart of this thriving, claustrophobic metropolis of roughly 80,000 souls, food was not just sustenance, it was the ultimate status symbol. For the vast majority of Londoners, the apprentices, the labourers, the tradesmen and the poor, daily survival hinged on a deeply repetitive but surprisingly resourceful diet. The absolute cornerstone of this everyday existence was pottage. Far from a simple soup, pottage was a thick, continuously boiling stew, kept over the hearth fire into which almost anything edible was thrown. Its base consisted of grains like oats or barley, heavily bulked out with whatever vegetables were in season: cabbage, leeks, onions, peas, and beans. If a commoner was lucky, a leftover bone or a tiny scrap of salted bacon might be tossed into the pot to give the broth a hint of savoury richness. Accompanying this eternal stew was bread, but certainly not the soft white loaves we know today. White bread, made from finely bolted wheat flour, was a luxury fiercely guarded by the city's elite. The working class instead consumed maslin bread, a heavy, dense and dark loaf, baked from a mixture of rye and wheat, or sometimes barley and pea flour when harvests were particularly poor. These coarse loaves were vital, sometimes even serving double duty as plates. Day-old bread known as a trencher was sliced thick and used to hold the pottage, soaking up the juices before being eaten itself at the end of the meal or tossed to the dogs. And then there was the matter of hydration. It is a popular historical myth that medieval people drank alcohol exclusively because the water was uniformly lethal. In truth, London had public conduits piping in fresh spring water. However, the river and many local wells were indeed heavily polluted by tanneries and butchers. Therefore, the safest and most calorie-dense beverage available was ale. This wasn't the strong, bitter IPA of a modern pub, but rather small ale, a weak, cloudy, unhopped brew, often sweet and highly nutritious. Men, women, and even toddlers consumed gallons of this weak ale daily, providing a crucial, safe source of hydration and essential carbohydrates to fuel the grueling manual labour required just to survive another day in the capital. Leave the muddy streets behind and ascend the stone steps into the vaulted great hall of a wealthy London merchant or a visiting nobleman. Here, the culinary landscape shifted dramatically from the desperate realm of mere survival to an extravagant theatre of wealth, power, and international connection. For the medieval elite, the dining table was a vibrant canvas for displaying social supremacy, and absolutely nothing signalled extreme wealth, quite like the heavy, almost intoxicating use of exotic spices. Long before the convenience of global supermarkets, ingredients such as black pepper, cinnamon, cloves, mace, nutmeg, and ginger had to travel thousands of perilous miles along the ancient Silk Road and through Venetian merchant galleys before finally arriving at London's bustling wharves. Consequently, they were staggeringly expensive commodities, sometimes quite literally worth their weight in gold. A nobleman's kitchen staff would employ these spices lavishly, not to mask the taste of rotting meat, which is a persistent, entirely false modern myth, as the wealthy had daily access to fresh livestock and sophisticated preserving methods, but rather to brazenly showcase their master's vast purchasing power. Feasts were astonishing, multi-course spectacles that could easily last for several hours. The heavy oak tables groaned under the weight of roasted swans, peacocks meticulously redressed in their own iridescent feathers after cooking, towering venison pasties, and entire roasted boars glistening with honey and saffron glazes. Meat was the undisputed king of the high table, fundamentally contrasting with the peasants' heavily vegetable-reliant pottage. Yet this carnivorous indulgence was strictly regulated by the Catholic Church, which mandated meatless fast days for over a third of the year, including every Friday and the entirety of Lent. On these mandated days, the elite simply pivoted to luxurious, expensive alternatives. Fresh salmon pulled from the Thames, imported sturgeon, baked lampreys, and elaborately sculpted jellies made from expensive almond milk. Furthermore, the preparation of this food was deeply influenced by Galenic medicine, the prevailing scientific and medical theory of the era. Master cooks meticulously balanced the internal humours of the ingredients, pairing cold and wet pork with hot and dry mustard, or serving cold fish with fiery, heavily spiced ginger sauces to ensure the physical and spiritual harmony of the aristocratic diners. The presentation was deemed just as crucial as the flavour profile. These master chefs routinely created illusions or soteltes, intricate sugar and almond paste sculptures shaped like castles, saints, or mythological beasts designed for visual shock and awe. Dining at this elite level was an intricately choreographed performance, strictly governed by aristocratic rank, where the choicest cuts of spiced meats were served exclusively to those seated at the elevated high table, firmly reinforcing the rigid social hierarchy of 14th century London with every single extravagant bite. Between the desperate, endlessly bubbling pots of the peasantry and the heavily spiced theatrical feasts of the nobility existed a vibrant, chaotic middle ground that feels surprisingly modern, medieval London's bustling street food scene. Because the vast majority of the city's poor and working-class residents lived in cramped, highly flammable timber-framed tenements, entirely lacking private hearths or cooking facilities. A strict regulation born from the ever-present, terrifying risk of citywide fires. They relied completely on the city's extensive network of professional cooks and pre-prepared food vendors. This sheer urban necessity gave rise to an extraordinary, highly developed medieval fast food culture, primarily centred along the muddy banks of the River Thames and in the busy thoroughfares of Cheapside. Here, the famous public cookshops operated day and night, offering a staggering array of ready-to-eat meals meticulously tailored to accommodate almost any budget or social standing. William Fitzstephen, a cleric whose vibrant descriptions of the city held true well into the 1300s, marvelled at these riverside establishments, noting that weary travellers entering or leaving the city at any hour could instantly find whatever their stomachs desired without having to wait. For a meagre copper coin, a tired labourer, a penniless student, or a newly arrived pilgrim could purchase hot, deeply savoury meat pies, roasted thrushes, or a simple, warming bowl of baked apples. Those merchants or minor officials with a bit more silver to spare could point to a prime cut of venison, a plump goose, or freshly caught river fish, and have it expertly roasted right before their very eyes. However, this bustling culinary underworld was not without its darker, highly deceptive side. The cutthroat urban competition and desperately thin profit margins meant that some unscrupulous vendors inevitably resorted to shady practices, such as disguising tainted days-old meat beneath heavy garlic and vinegar sauces, or passing off cheap, tough beef as premium venison in their heavily crusted deep dish pies. To combat this rampant fraud, the powerful city guilds and local aldermen implemented incredibly strict, heavily enforced hygiene and trading standards. Bakers caught selling underweight or adulterated loaves were publicly dragged through the cobbled streets with the offending bread tied tightly around their necks, while cooks found peddling rotten meat faced immediate jail time or the pillory, subjected to the agonizing humiliation of having their spoiled wares publicly burned directly under their noses. This dynamic, fiercely regulated ecosystem of street corner piemongers, neighborhood alewives, and bustling riverside cookshops formed the true, beating culinary backbone of 14th century London. It was a unique, democratic space where the rigid classes briefly mingled, where the sharp aroma of cheap roasted pork collided with the faint, lingering scent of aristocratic spices blowing from the great houses, proving that then, just as today, the true soul of the city could always be found in its collective, unapologetic appetite.
2 skewers, please, right away.